This is the time of year we wait for all year long. It's when apples come in season and it's time to start baking your favorite apple dishes. And this is why today I'm sharing with you these vegan apple crumb muffins. They're so good. They have this delicious buttery crumb topping, and I even add a little vanilla drizzle just to, showcase them even more. They've got tender bits of apple inside. These are soft, sweet muffins that are perfect to share on the weekends. You can have them for brunch. I even like making them on a random Tuesday. So I think today we're going to be making these muffins, and I think you're going to love this recipe. They taste as delicious as they smell, so I can't wait for you to have these in your kitchen and have these aromas just filling up your kitchen as well. I like to begin with the crumb topping, and there's a really specific reason why, and that is because once you get the muffins together, you want to make sure they go in the oven really quickly so we can take advantage of the baking powder doing its job, making the muffins rise. So I like to have everything else ready ahead of time. So I will start with making this crumb topping, and this is 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of brown sugar. I'm using light brown sugar, but dark brown sugar works too. I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and we're just going to stir that together. The goal here is just to get everything mixed so you get the brown sugar and the flour all distributed equally, along with the cinnamon too, obviously. And what I have here are a couple of tablespoons of vegan butter that are they're still together, but it's soft. I'm just gonna stir that in, and that is gonna be the completion of our crumb topping. So I'm just gonna give that a stir. That butter in the topping that adds so much flavor. I love having a crumb topping on just about any dessert, but especially muffins. It's really nice. I'm gonna get a different utensil to help out here.
And get the little escapee too.
I don't see an escapee. Oh, this? Okay, you'll see this is a really, it's a coarse mixture, so you have to really kind of work the butter into this, and I think that's what makes the best texture for a crumb topping. And so I'm just gonna work that in just a little bit more so we get the butter distributed throughout. That's the hardest part. Let's see, that's pretty close. So it's kind of a little bit on the sandy side. You can always add just a little bit more vegan butter if you'd like yours to be a different texture, but maybe like a 1/2 tablespoon more vegan butter if you'd like, but I kind of like this texture. It's pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna set that aside, and we'll move on to making the batter itself. I like to start with the wet ingredients, and I've got 1/2 cup of, this is oat milk, any kind of milk. You can use soy milk or almond milk. They're all gonna work. And to that, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. That's gonna create a little buttermilk effect. And I've got a teaspoon of vanilla. And here I've got around 1/3 cup of vegetable oil. And to finish it out, I have a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. I love using brown sugar because I feel like it adds just that hint of molasses flavor that just, brings this recipe that down-home country vibe. That's flavors that we just love so much. Plus, the nice thing about brown sugar is it adds moisture to the muffins as well. So I think that's pretty well combined. So let's move on to the flour ingredients. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour here. And to that, I'm gonna add, this is 1 teaspoon of baking powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And then spices-wise, I have a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and of course, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, because that's gonna add some nice flavor. And then we're gonna give that a stir just to make sure everything is distributed nicely. I always like to say I don't want somebody getting a bite with all this baking soda in it, so that's why I like to make sure the baking soda is distributed throughout. Okay, now we're gonna pour the wet ingredients in right here. Now we're gonna get that brown sugar that's at the bottom. Okay, stir this all together. We don't want to over mix it, but we just want to make sure we get all the big clumps of flour out. There we go. See, you can see lots of little clumps of flowers in there, but the little ones I don't worry too much about. It's the big clumps of flour we want to make sure we've gotten taken care of. So I'm just going to give it one more aggressive stir. And then let's talk about the apples, because I have a favorite little trick here. I'm going to add most of the apples to this batter, but I'm going to reserve a few, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. So let's stir in these apples. I was going to show you actually the way that the two pieces of equipment that I think are really nice for apple season is to have an apple apple corer and this vegetable peeler, because what I did is I just used the vegetable peeler to peel the apples, and then it's so nice to have this because you can just press down on this and it cores it, and it creates these nice little slices, which of course then I still had to chop, but it's pretty nice to have that.
How many apples is that?
This is about, because my apples were really small, these were Missouri grown apples, so they were local produce and they're pretty small. I used about 1.5 apples for this. So we'll give that a stir. This is our batter. You can see it's nice and thick. I really love a thick batter when it comes to vegan baking, because I think it helps the muffins rise up nice and tall. Okay, so here we go. I've got this pan lined with muffin papers, and I have people who leave comments sometimes that sometimes vegan muffins stick to papers, and I totally get that, but I have been using these. It's not an affiliate or anything, but I found these, If You Care, I think this is a brand name, baking cups, and they're perfect. The muffins don't stick at all. I love it. So it's one of my favorites. So I'm going to show you my favorite little trick of making sure every apple gets a little bit, or every muffin gets a little bit of apple. We just, we're just going to use a cookie dough dispenser and just dispense the dough into each compartment. I'm just going to do a few of them here for you. And sometimes I found that you would get to the end and you would discover that the last couple didn't get any bits of apples in them. And so what I started doing is reserving a few apples. And then what I'm going to do, I'll show you, before I bake and before I put on the crumb topping, I just add a few apple pieces to the top. What I love about this is, even if there are plenty of apple bits in the dough already, or the batter, you get even more, and I just love it. It's just, like I say, it's almost like, when you're making chocolate chip cookies and you add a little bit more cookies on the top. That's what this feels like to me. It's like you're just making sure that your muffins are just bakery shop quality and just loaded with apples in every bite. It's so good. So yeah, now what we'll do is add the crumble topping. And that is really all there is to it. Now what I like to do is kind of press it in so that it gets nice and becomes part of the muffin. Just press it in just a little bit, and then I'm going to add a few apple chunks to this one and keep going. I love having crumble topping, and I'd like to make sure that it's equally distributed, so I always add a lot. More, you know, sometimes they say less is more, but I feel like when it comes to muffins, more is more. That's just all there is to it. So this goes into the oven and bakes at 350 Fahrenheit for around 20 to 24 minutes. Now, if you wanted to make sure your muffins get a nice tall rise, you can increase the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit for the first 5 minutes and then turn it down. Turn it down to 350. But if you don't want to mess with that, you can just leave them baking at 350 for 20 minutes, and you're gonna get these beautiful muffins that have this nice tall, you know, that's a nice tall muffin. I love that. It's so beautiful. Now, I want to talk to you about the vanilla glaze because I know you're going to be asking that question. So what I do is I do around a half cup of powdered sugar, and to that I just add a little bit of I like using vanilla flavored milk. This is soy milk with a little bit of vanilla flavor to it. And we're just going to add a little bit in there to get it to a nice consistency. I like to start out with a little. You can always add more. It's kind of hard if you get too much in there. So I just always like to try to start with just a little and get a nice thick glaze. And then this can I like to drizzle this. I like to just give it a good stir so you don't have all those little clumps in there, and then drizzle this over your muffins when they've cooled off a little bit. You can just see that adds so much flair to your muffins, and obviously it's completely optional, but I highly recommend having a vanilla glaze. These muffins are plenty sweet, but just a sweet little glaze on top, it really adds so much. So I am so ready for this taste test. I can't even wait because, you know, these are so good. I can't wait. That is so good. I love the bits of cinnamon. You can taste the nutmeg, the vanilla glaze on top. Wow, that is amazing. I love the buttery flavor of the crumb on top. And man, this just tastes like fall. This is so good. This is like gonna be one of my favorite fall recipes I'm gonna be making over and over again, which I have already, but yes, this is going to be a favorite recipe. I hope it is for you as well. I also realize you may be asking a question like, can I make these gluten-free? Absolutely, you can make them gluten-free. Just use the gluten-free baking flour. And another question I know some people have asked is, do I have to peel the apples? I highly recommend it just because I think the peel gets a little bit chewy, and a nice soft tender muffin having a chewy peel is kind of, you know, maybe not what you're going for. However, if you don't mind that and you want that kind of rustic look of an unpeeled apple in your muffins, I say go for it. So you don't have to peel them. Just chop them up into little bits and you're ready to make your muffins. So anyway, I am so glad that you joined me today here in my kitchen. It's always so much fun when you're here with me, and I love baking with you and making all kinds of vegan recipes. So if you like today's recipe, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more recipes coming your way every week.